I still remember the sound my phone made that morning. A soft vibration. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to pull my attention away from the suitcase standing by the door. I smiled before I even looked. That suitcase had been packed since the night before. Neatly folded clothes, a wide-brim hat, sunscreen tucked into the side pocket. It had been years since I'd had anything resembling a real vacation. And now, finally, I was going on a cruise with my son. My only son. I picked up the phone, already imagining the deck, the ocean air, the way he used to laugh when he was a boy and the world still felt simple. The smile vanished. Mom, we need to talk. Plans changed. You're not coming on the cruise anymore. For a moment, my brain refused to process the words. I reread the message. Then again. Then a third time. My fingers started to tremble. I typed back. What do you mean I'm not coming? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then another message came through. Lena thinks it should just be real family this time. Real family. Those 2 words hit harder than anything else. I was standing alone in my living room, shoes on, coat ready, suitcase by the door, like a guest who had overstayed her welcome in her own life. I raised my son alone. I worked double shifts when he was small. I skipped meals so he could have new school shoes. I paid his college fees, helped with his wedding, and later, without hesitation, helped him buy a house when the bank said no. And now, apparently, I wasn't real family. Before I continue, if you're listening to this on the channel, take a second to subscribe. Stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're reminders that self-respect matters, even when family is involved. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I sat down slowly on the couch. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The irony burned. Just a month earlier, I had made the final payment on my son's house. A house with my name still on the deed. I had promised myself I'd talk to him about transferring ownership someday. He always brushed it off. Why rush, Mom? He'd say. We're family. Family. That word seemed to mean something different every time it came out of his mouth. I stared at the walls, replaying the slow, painful pattern I'd ignored for years. It hadn't started with the cruise. It started quietly. Sunday dinners became busy weekends. Phone calls turned into unanswered texts. Invitations stopped coming. When my granddaughter's birthday passed, I found out about the party through photos online. Smiling faces, balloons, a cake I never knew existed. Still, I helped. When the mortgage was short, I covered it. When the car broke down, I paid. When Lena wanted a kitchen remodel, I transferred money without asking questions. Love, I told myself, meant giving. But sitting there with that suitcase by the door, something inside me finally snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. I wasn't being loved. I was being used. Another message buzzed in. Don't make this difficult, Mom. We'll talk when we're back. When we're back. As if I were an inconvenience to be managed later. I stood up, walked to my study, and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a blue folder. Every document. Every receipt. Every mortgage payment. The deed, with my name clearly printed as the primary owner. I sat at the desk, flipping through the pages, and felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Resolve. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my feelings to keep the peace. All the times I'd convinced myself that being patient would eventually earn respect. It hadn't. Respect, I realized, isn't granted because you endure mistreatment. It's granted when you stop accepting it. That night, while my son and his wife boarded a cruise I helped pay for, I made a decision that would change everything. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "Hi, Daniel," I said calmly. "I need to talk to you about selling a house." There was a pause on the other end. "The house in Oak Ridge?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "The one that's still legally mine." Silence again. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Then you're fully within your rights." I hung up, walked back into the living room, and zipped the suitcase shut. Not because I was going on a trip, but because, for the first time in years, I was finally choosing myself. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. I sat across from Daniel, my hands folded neatly in my lap, trying not to show how strange it felt to talk about my own son like this, like he was a legal matter instead of the boy I once held on my chest when he cried through the night. Daniel flipped through the folder I'd brought. Receipts. Bank statements. Mortgage payments. Year after year. Finally, he looked up. "Legally," he said carefully, "the house belongs to you." I nodded. I already knew that. "They've lived there for 5 years," he continued, "but ownership never transferred. There's no written agreement promising that it would." "What about the money they paid?" I asked. Daniel tapped a page. "A few installments. Less than 20% of the total. And even that doesn't override the deed." He leaned back slightly. "You can sell the house whenever you want." The words landed heavier than I expected. I wasn't thrilled. I wasn't excited. But I felt something close to balance. "What happens to their things?" I asked. "You'll need to give reasonable notice," he said. 30 days is standard. Their belongings can be placed in storage. Everything handled properly. I stared at the desk between us. For years, I'd been afraid of being seen as harsh. Afraid of being labeled the difficult mother. Afraid of losing my son if I ever stopped saying yes. But what had saying yes gotten me? A text message telling me I wasn't real family. "I want to proceed," I said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Then I'll connect you with an agent who specializes in discreet sales." Discreet. That word mattered. I didn't want signs on the lawn or neighbors gossiping. I didn't want drama. I wanted closure. 2 days later, the agent called. "Your house is in a prime area," she said. "If you price it fairly, we'll have serious buyers quickly." "Price it fair," I replied. "I'm not trying to squeeze anyone." She paused. "Most sellers say the opposite." I'm not most sellers. While paperwork moved quietly behind the scenes, my son and his wife were sailing through the ocean, posting photos that appeared on my phone like salt in an open wound. Cocktails at sunset. Elegant dinners. Spa robes. Smiling faces. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. My credit card notifications. A massage. A private excursion. A luxury dining upgrade. My card. The one still linked to the reservation. I stared at the screen, stunned. So I wasn't real family, but I was still their wallet. That was the moment any lingering doubt disappeared. I called the bank and froze the card. Then, for the first time in my life, I blocked my son's number. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. All communication would go through the lawyer from now on. A week later, the agent called again, her voice bright. "We have a buyer. Cash offer. Wants a fast close." "How fast?" I asked. 2 weeks. Possibly sooner. "Do it." I signed the documents calmly, methodically, as if I were handling a business transaction. because that's what it had become. The sale closed in record time. The money transferred into my account quietly, without celebration. I didn't feel rich. I felt untethered, free but unsteady, like stepping onto solid ground after years of balancing on a rope. I chose the possession date carefully, the exact day my son and his wife would return from their cruise. I asked Daniel to prepare a formal notice, professional, unemotional, impossible to twist into drama. No accusations. No explanations. Just facts. Their belongings were placed in storage. They had 30 days to retrieve them. All communication through legal counsel. The morning they were due back, I packed a small bag, not a suitcase this time. I drove to a modest beachfront apartment I had rented quietly. Nothing fancy. But when I opened the balcony door, the sound of the waves filled the room. No tension. No criticism. No walking on eggshells. Just air. And space. That evening, my phone exploded. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I made tea and sat on the balcony, watching the horizon darken. For the first time in years, I slept without anxiety pressing on my chest. The next morning, I turned my phone on, just long enough to call Daniel. "They've contacted you?" I asked. "Oh yes," he replied. "They're upset." "What are they saying?" "That the house was theirs. That they had no warning. That they don't know where to go." I closed my eyes briefly. "And what did you tell them?" "That the sale was lawful. That you are the legal owner. That their belongings are safe. And that all further communication must remain professional." "Can they sue?" I asked. "They can try," he said honestly. "But they don't have a case." I thanked him and hung up. Later that day, my sister called. Her voice was sharp before I could even say hello. "Are you out of your mind?" "I'm fine," I replied calmly. "You sold your own son's house." "I sold my house," I corrected. "The one in my name. That I paid for." "He's devastated," she said. "He says you blindsided him." I laughed softly, not with humor, but disbelief. "He blindsided me first," I said. "Standing me up at the pier. Calling me not real family." She went quiet. "I didn't raise him to treat me like an ATM," I continued. "I raised him to be kind. Somewhere along the way, he forgot that." There was a long pause. "I hope you know what you're doing," she finally said. "So do I," I replied. And for the first time, I meant it. That afternoon, I opened social media once. Just once. My daughter-in-law had posted a story. "Some people can't handle letting go. Beware of gifts with hidden strings." I smiled sadly. There were no strings. Only boundaries she never expected me to pull. As the sun set, I walked along the beach, barefoot in the sand. I wasn't celebrating. But I wasn't breaking either. I was reclaiming something I'd lost long before the house. My dignity. 3 days passed after the house was sold. 3 days of silence. No calls. No messages. No noise. It was the quiet after a storm, the kind that feels almost peaceful until you remember what's still broken. On the 4th morning, Daniel called. "They want to meet," he said. "Your son specifically." I expected that. "Where?" I asked. "At my office," he replied. "He agreed to your conditions. Just him. No wife. No surprises." I took a slow breath. "All right," I said. "Set it up." That night, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid, but because memories kept surfacing. My son learning to ride a bike. My son crying the day his father died. My son promising, "I'll always take care of you, Mom." Promises age poorly when comfort replaces character. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Nothing dramatic. Nothing apologetic. A soft blue blouse. Clean shoes. Hair pulled back. I wasn't going to look like a villain, or a victim. When I arrived, Daniel led me into the conference room. My son was already there. He looked different. Tired. Thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, my heart clenched. Then I remembered the text. "You're not real family." "Mom," he said quietly, standing up. I nodded and sat across from him. Daniel stayed close, but silent. My son ran a hand through his hair. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this to us?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. "I didn't do anything to you," I said calmly. "I exercised my legal rights." "That was our home," he insisted. "We lived there." "You lived in a house I paid for," I replied. "There's a difference." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "We were going to transfer it eventually," he said. "You knew that." "I knew what you said," I replied. "But I also knew nothing was ever signed." Daniel slid a document slightly forward, just enough to remind him of reality. My son exhaled sharply. "We paid some of it," he said. "That has to count for something." "It does," I nodded. "And you'll be reimbursed for every cent you can prove you paid." His eyes widened. "You're not keeping the money?" "This was never about money," I said. "It was about respect." He looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time in years. "You could have talked to us," he said. "You didn't have to go this far." I leaned forward slightly. "And you could have talked to me before telling me I wasn't real family," I said evenly. "You could have told me face to face. You could have cancelled the cruise properly. You could have stopped using my credit card." Silence fell heavy between us. "I didn't know about the card," he muttered. "You didn't ask either," I replied. He swallowed. "So, where are we supposed to go?" he asked. The question was quiet, almost childlike. The old version of me would have rushed to fix it. This version didn't. "You're adults," I said gently. "You have jobs. You'll rent a place. You'll figure it out, just like I had to figure out how to stand at home alone with a suitcase after being uninvited from my own son's life." His shoulders slumped. The meeting lasted less than 20 minutes. No shouting. No theatrics. Just truth, finally spoken. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. "You've changed," he said. I met his eyes. "No," I replied. "I stopped disappearing." After he left, Daniel looked at me. "You handled that well." "I had years of practice staying quiet," I said. "This was easier." Outside, the air felt lighter. That afternoon, I blocked one more number. Not to punish. To protect. 3 days later, something unexpected happened. An email arrived from an unfamiliar address. The subject line froze my breath. "Bella misses you. My granddaughter." The email was from my daughter-in-law's mother. She wrote carefully, kindly. She said Bella had been asking where I was. Why Grandma didn't come anymore. Why no one talked about me. She ended the email with one sentence that shattered me. "Whatever is happening between adults, a child shouldn't lose her grandmother." I sat there, tears sliding silently down my face. I hadn't done all this to disappear from Bella's life. I replied simply, I miss her too. If everyone agrees, I'd love to see her. The response came quickly. I'll talk to them. That Sunday, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Bella ran into my arms like nothing had ever changed. Grandma, she laughed. In that moment, I knew something with real weight was at stake. This wasn't just about a house. It was about the kind of future I was willing to accept. And the kind I wasn't. Bella's laugh filled my apartment like sunlight. She sat cross-legged on the rug, lining up seashells she'd collected from the beach below my balcony. Every now and then she'd look up, smiling, as if afraid I might disappear again. Grandma, she asked, are you coming to my birthday this year? The question pierced me. Yes, I said softly. If your parents allow it, I'll be there. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her shells. Her grandmother, my former daughter-in-law's mother, stood quietly by the window. She had watched everything without interference, letting Bella and me reconnect without hovering. When it was time to leave, Bella hugged me tightly. Don't go away again, she whispered. I won't, I promised. And for the first time, I truly believed it. After they left, the apartment felt heavy with silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was thoughtful. That evening, Daniel called. They've hired an attorney, he said. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course they have. They're claiming there was a verbal promise that you'd eventually give them the house, he continued. They're also pointing to the payments they made. Do they have proof? I asked. No, he said. And verbal agreements are weak at best, especially when contradicted by written ownership. So what happens now? We respond formally. You're on solid ground. After hanging up, I walked onto the balcony. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, steady and unmoved by human drama. I realized something then. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. Finished explaining. Finished rescuing. Finished sacrificing my peace to keep others comfortable. The next morning, I made another appointment with Daniel. I want to settle, I told him. He looked surprised. You don't have to. I know, I said. But I don't want this dragging on for years. I want it clean. Settle how? I'll reimburse every dollar they can prove they paid toward the house, I said. Adjusted properly. No more. No less. Daniel nodded slowly. That's generous. It's not generosity, I replied. It's closure. Then I added something that made him look up sharply. And I want to create a trust. For who? He asked. My granddaughter. Daniel leaned forward. I want an education fund, I said. Locked. Untouchable. Only for her. Only when she turns 18. There was a long pause. That's significant, he said. She didn't ask for any of this, I replied. She shouldn't pay the price. The paperwork took weeks. During that time, my son didn't contact me directly. Everything went through lawyers. But Bella came every Sunday. We baked cookies. We read stories. We watched the tide come in and out. She became my anchor. Then one afternoon, Daniel called again. There's a problem. My stomach tightened. What kind? They're contesting the trust. On what grounds? That as parents, they should control educational funds. I let out a slow breath. So it begins. They want early access, Daniel continued. Private schools. Tuition. Expenses. And if I say no, they'll take it to court. I looked at the photo on my wall. Bella holding a bucket, smiling proudly on the beach. Then we go to court, I said. That night, my son called me directly. For the first time in months. Mom, he said quietly. I heard about the fund. Yes, I replied. Thank you, he said. For Bella. There was a pause. But Lena thinks you're trying to control things again. I smiled sadly. I'm controlling one thing, I said. My boundaries. He sighed. She wants to fight this. I know. She says you're punishing us. I'm protecting myself, I replied. And my granddaughter. He was silent for a long moment. I don't know how we got here, he finally said. I do, I replied gently. We got here by ignoring small hurts until they became unbearable. After we hung up, I sat alone, wondering how love could twist itself into something so painful when left unchecked. Court documents arrived the following week. Cold. Formal. Impersonal. I read them without shaking. Because this time, I wasn't defending a house. I was defending a future. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just in temperature, but in feeling. Wooden benches. White walls. Faces trained to stay neutral while families unraveled in front of them every day. I sat beside Daniel, hands folded, breathing slow. Across the room sat my son and his wife. She wouldn't look at me. My son did, briefly, then looked away. The judge listened patiently as both sides spoke. Their lawyer painted a picture of me as controlling. A wealthy grandmother using money to influence a child's future. Someone who couldn't let go. Daniel responded calmly. He spoke of legal ownership. Of clear documentation. Of a trust created solely for a child's future, not leverage. But the hardest part wasn't the legal arguments. It was knowing Bella was the invisible center of it all. The hearing ended with no final decision. Pending further review, the judge said. More waiting. More tension. More damage no paperwork could measure. That evening, Bella came over as usual. She was quieter than normal. She didn't run to the balcony or ask for cookies. Instead, she sat beside me on the couch, swinging her legs slowly. Grandma, she asked suddenly, are you and Mommy mad at each other because of me? My chest tightened. No, I said immediately. Never because of you. But Mommy cries a lot, she continued. And Daddy looks sad. And everyone keeps talking about school and money. I knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Listen to me, I said gently. Grown-ups sometimes make things complicated. But none of this is your fault. Not even a little. She searched my face. Promise. I promise, I said. And I meant it with everything I had. That night, after Bella left, I broke down for the first time since this all began. Not loudly. Quietly. The kind of crying that comes when you're exhausted from being strong. The next morning, Daniel called early. Something's changed, he said. My heart jumped. What? They want to settle. I sat up straight. Why? Daniel hesitated. Your daughter-in-law lost her job, he said. A while ago. She hid it. The house was meant to be collateral for a loan. Everything clicked into place. The sudden distance. The pressure. The desperation masked as control. She wants access to the trust now, Daniel continued. Or she's threatening to escalate. And my son? I asked. He's not fully aligned with her anymore. That afternoon, my son showed up at my door unannounced. He looked broken. I didn't know, he said immediately. About the job. About the debt. I stepped aside and let him in. She planned everything around that house, he continued. When you sold it, everything collapsed. And instead of talking to me, I said quietly, she told you I wasn't real family. He nodded, ashamed. I let it happen, he said. I should have stopped it. We sat in silence for a long moment. Mom, he said finally, she's talking about moving. Far. With Bella. My heart dropped. Without telling you? Yes. That night, I barely slept. 2 days later, it happened. Bella didn't show up for school. Phones went unanswered. By noon, the police were involved. By evening, my son was sitting in my living room, pale, shaking. She took her, he whispered. She took my daughter. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. Then, near midnight, news came in. They'd been found. Safe. But trying to cross state lines. The court moved quickly after that. Emergency orders. Custody changes. Supervised visits. When I saw Bella again, she clung to me like she was afraid the ground might disappear. I didn't like it, she whispered. I wanted to come home. I held her close. You are home, I said. Everything had changed. And yet, somehow, it was finally clear. The final court date came on a quiet Tuesday morning. No crowds. No shouting. Just tired faces carrying months of strain. Bella was with a child advocate in another room. She didn't need to see adults arguing over what should have been obvious from the start. Her safety came first. The judge spoke slowly, carefully. Custody would remain primarily with my son. All visits with his wife would be supervised until therapy was completed. The education trust would remain untouched until Bella turned 18. No loopholes. No exceptions. When the gavel came down, my knees weakened, not from victory, but relief. Outside the courthouse, my son stopped me. Mom, he said, voice unsteady, I owe you an apology. I waited. For the cruise. For the text. For letting anyone make you feel disposable. He swallowed hard. You were never the problem. Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't rush to comfort him this time. I love you, I said. But love doesn't mean self-erasure. He nodded. I know that now. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Healing never does. But it became honest. Bella moved in with her father. My apartment gained a second toothbrush, a small bed, drawings taped to the fridge. Sunday mornings became pancakes and sandcastles. Slowly, my son learned to stand on his own, financially and emotionally. As for his wife, therapy softened her edges. She didn't change overnight. But she stopped fighting everything and everyone. Months later, she told me something quietly during a supervised exchange. I thought control meant safety, she said. I was wrong. I nodded. So was I replied. For a long time. One evening, Bella and I sat on the beach watching the sun sink into the water. She held my hand tightly. Grandma, she said, are we a real family now? I smiled. We always were, I said. We just had to learn how to treat each other better. She leaned against me, satisfied. The house I sold? It was just walls. What I gained was something far more solid. Self-respect. Boundaries. Peace. I didn't lose my son. I found him again. And I found myself